Good morning. As board chair and on behalf of the Georgia Bio Board and the Summit Program Committee, I want to welcome you to the 18th Annual Bio Innovation Summit. This year's theme is empowering the patient. And with that in mind, I want to extend a very warm welcome to all the patient advocates that we have with us today. I would also like to extend a very special thanks to Scott Rizzo and his committee. I think that having been the program chair, the summit chair in the past, that's a lot of work. They've done an amazing job this year. They put together a very relevant and exciting program. It's going to cover all of the topics that I know that you're going to want to hear more about. It covers R&D, digital health, how technology and data are really helping us accelerate innovation. Talk about new models for funding and financing, public policy, and so much more. And also, we have extraordinary leaders with us and speakers for our program today. We have globally and nationally recognized leaders in the life sciences and healthcare. And one of the things when I was looking at the program, the common thread there really is that they have this shared ambition to have an impact and make a difference in people's lives. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Georgia Bio President and CEO, Maria Thacker-Gauthier. I'm also excited to share some news with you. Just recently, Maria was named as in the under 40 in the Atlanta Business Chronicles honoree list. And this was really a very competitive process. There were more than 400 nominations, and Maria was recognized for her professional and personal accomplishments. And she secured this recognition alongside many other prominent Atlanta leaders. Now, will you join me in a round of applause for Maria?
I thought I was going to get away without everybody knowing about that. Good morning, everybody. I'm really thrilled to welcome you here this morning. Today is about connecting with colleagues, new and old, learning from each other, and finding ways to partner and collaborate to grow our companies, advance your research, or simply build your network. Now, before I do dive into my remarks, I would like to say Yom Tov to those who will be celebrating Yom Kippur this evening. For those of you unfamiliar with Georgia Bio, we are the life sciences trade association that works to support the biotech, medtech, and digital health industries throughout the state of Georgia. Our mission is to advance the growth of the life sciences industry and foster strategic partnerships that can create a healthier world. To accomplish this mission, Georgia Bio conducts business, economic development activities, advocates on behalf of the industry on public policy matters, educates the public about the benefits of life sciences research and product development, and provides a network for the exchange of ideas, information, and opportunities. Our national affiliations include BIO, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, AdvaMed, the MedTech Association, and Pharma. Life sciences is a fast-growing and resilient industry. From 2007 to 2017, employment grew by 14.9% compared to the 7.7% growth in life sciences nationally, and an 8.7% growth in private employment across all industries in the state. Additionally, the sector experienced fewer job losses and increases in new establishments during the recession, compared to a loss of nearly 10% of all private sector jobs in Georgia from 2007 to 2010. There's a lot more data available on our new website online, and also you can find a number of one-pagers at the registration that highlights our latest industry report, which was the first one done in 9 years. It was wonderful to see how rapidly and significantly the industry has grown in nearly a decade. So this year, Georgia Bio celebrates its 30th anniversary, and we're excited to be rolling out a new comprehensive strategic plan later this year, where we will be looking to be more collaborative with our regional partners, like South Carolina Bio and Bio Alabama, who are all here today, to be more engaged with our state legislative leadership, some of whom are also here today with us, better coordinate with our industry and economic development partners to build industry awareness and create a more cohesive story about our ecosystem, and continue to advance our workforce pipeline through our Georgia Bioed Institute. Now, GA Bioed is something I would like to take a moment to comment on that shows the importance of crafting the right story, collaborating with our economic development developers, and building champions in the legislature. Slide. Yeah. Included in Georgia's 2020 budget signed into law by Governor Brian Kemp on May 10th were $323,000 going to Georgia Bioed to support the life sciences education in the rural school system through the Georgia Department of Education and the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers. This public-private partnership will provide educators with laboratory experiences that enable them to return to the classroom and offer instruction that aligns with the Georgia Standards of Excellence and prepares and inspires students to enter a career in life sciences. On the screen you'll see a little bit, but this will really manifest as a 2-day symposium for 7th to 12th grade life science high school teachers, and which was one interesting fact we quickly learned is in our rural communities, a number of our high school teachers are also our middle school teachers. So we're thrilled to be impacting a much wider audience than we originally had intended. The more educators know about our industry and the one that exists in their own backyard, the better they can equip students in Georgia's workforce. Now, here are some ways that your company and you can help keep this program going and support it and make sure it's successful. Your company can help keep materials out of landfills, and also remember we're a 501c3, so you are able to do this as a charitable donation, but you can donate your surplus equipment or extra equipment or just new equipment if you would like to the program. Part of the commitment from the industry is to supply enough equipment and match a certain number of dollars with the state's give in order to make sure this is successful around our community. Additionally, the funds allowed us to welcome 2 new members to our team who are running this program. Kristen Boskin, who I don't know where she is, there she is, and Megan Heafy in the back corner there. They'll be walking around today, so I encourage you to meet them and connect with them at some point today. Kristen will be directing the program, and Megan is supporting her as well as driving forward our equipment depot. Now let's turn back to today's event. I want you to ask yourself, why am I here? Is it business building? Is it to network with colleagues and friends? Is it to learn from experts? Or is it simply to support your community? I would argue that your response to most, if not all of these questions is a resounding yes. But I would challenge you to also be reminded as to why you work in this industry in the first place. As Patty mentioned, today's conference theme is empowering the patient. Too often, we get bogged down in the day-to-day of running a company, a lab, or in my case, a nonprofit, and the reasons behind your work get unintentionally pushed aside. Today, let the conference be a reminder that we are here today to drive cures and treatments to patients around the world. Remember people like the late Dr. Tony Schuker, who left us 10 years ago this past March and who today's poster session is named for. He was a board member, mentor to many young professionals in this room and other emerging leaders, and a passionate musician. Or Senator Isaacson, who's been a tireless advocate for our industry and a friend to the organization, who, as we all know, is battling Parkinson's. And at 3:30 today, you can even hear from 4 young patient advocates and learn what it's like to live as a young person with chronic, complex, or rare medical conditions. These are just a few examples of why we are here and why we work in this industry. We are all patients in some capacity and have been touched by patient stories. Without health innovations, I myself would have lost my leg 6.5 years ago, and my daughter would not exist today. My father succumbed to a rare and fatal disease, and I can think of 3 friends under 40 in the last 3 years who have fought breast cancer. The point is, each of us are impacted, and we have a responsibility to our own community to address challenges. So while you're here today, reflect on why you're in this business. I challenge you to use our hashtag and post a story to social media. Tell your story and remind others of the industry's work and your personal story and your personal passion for it. We also invite you to get a flu shot at the closing reception and tag it on social media and invite people to get their vaccine too. Today is the largest event we have had in more than 5 years, and I'm thrilled to say that we have at least one accomplished female on every single panel for the first time in our history of this event in 18 years. So thank you to our program committee for helping support that goal of mine and making sure that happened. I encourage you to take time today to visit our exhibition alley, hear what research is taking place at your universities at the poster session, also in the exhibition, and take advantage of free consultations with experienced IP attorneys in our IP lounge. We have been excited to partner with new organizations this year and those who have had long-lasting relationships with us for more than 30 years. I would like to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors who you will see displayed throughout the Galleria, but in particular, I would like to recognize our champion sponsors who are displayed here, as well as our premier sponsors. Thank you all. Without your support, the organization could certainly not put on this event today and could not work on all the other operations that it runs throughout the year. Finally, I'd like to thank Amgen for being our first ever patient advocate sponsor and the Georgia Department of Economic Development for making this morning's keynote possible. And lastly, thank you to today's volunteers, Destination South, my amazing staff, Joseph Santoro, who heads up external affairs, and Christina Forbes, who basically makes me look great all the time. So she's really responsible for much of everything you see today. So I really appreciate all my staff support, all of our speakers today, and all of our sponsors. So with that, I'd like to introduce our opening keynote. Dr. Jean-Christophe Delie, the global CEO for UCB, Inc. Dr. Delie joined UCB in 2011. He became UCB's CEO on January 1st of 2015 after having successfully led their biobrands and solutions divisions as executive VP. He is a member of the board of UCB, president of FPIA, a member of the board of Pharma, and a member of the board of WellBio. Jean-Christophe Delie is an experienced global leader, and we're honored to have him. He was trained as a medical doctor and specialized in rheumatology. He has built a distinguished career, for a 30-year career in the biopharmaceutical industry, taking on different global responsibilities in different parts of the world. His patient-centric approach, his passion for science, combined with his strategic and operational skills, have allowed him to significantly contribute to UCB's success in recent years. His ambition to continue to further engage UCB teams behind the company's vision and fully leverage UCB's strong culture and talents. So now, please enjoy this video before we welcome, oh, I apologize, we struck that video. So now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Delie to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you for the nice introductions. How not to disappoint you after such a nice introductions anyway. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and it's a great opportunity and honor for me to share with you a few thoughts, and particularly when I look at the theme of today and empowering patients, which is such an important element of what we are doing, all of us, and why we are here. Atlanta is have been the headquarters of the U.S. operation of UCB for the last 25 years, and we are very pleased and proud to be part of this very active community. And I'm very pleased also to see that in the room today there are representatives of all the different stakeholders and active contributors to creating value in the healthcare system, which is so much important to realize that we need to work together. And having these experience and these opportunity that the one that you will have today, building on Mari's challenge they just share with us, it's important to make sure that we realize that it starts by engaging and connecting with each other. I think a lot of leaders in the pharmaceutical industry in the past years came to stage and start their notes by mentioning that we are in a challenging time. And so I will not be very original if I share with you that I do feel that we are now really getting into an inflection point in the healthcare environment and systems. And even though it has been the case for the past years, I do feel that we have together a tremendous opportunity to change the way we are really working together. On one side, the science are advancing in a way which is unprecedented. We are now more than ever able to discover, develop, and provide access for patients treatment that up to now was not available. And some of the disease that have been untreatable can now be treated. On the other hand, I think it's fair to say that all of the systems across the world are facing challenges. And these challenges are not easy to solve because the system is really heavily fragmented and we are used to work in silos. And so these silos, sometimes with conflicting incentives, are not easy to break down and to solve the challenges that we have ahead of us. Yes, the healthcare system, almost everywhere, is very complex and fragmented, with conflicting agenda for some of the partners. And so in order to solve these challenges, we need two things, and that's the main message that I would like to carry this morning. We need first to change our mindsets, to be more open and to be more humble and tolerant to each other in order to recognize that we cannot, by ourselves, solve the issues individually, but we, collectively, we can change and make and build a better future. And the second message is, in order to do so, we do need to connect better together and to build a connected healthcare system. Yes, I do believe that no one can win this fight against the disease in a sustainable way on our own. At UCB, we are working to try to make sure that we can collaborate and contribute with all the stakeholders to find the best solution that works for the patients. And yes, and it's if we can be and start with the patients in mind, that in my mind, I think we can work to a better solution. And if we think about the evolution of the systems, I think that we recognize that no one can work individually, independently, and we need these joint stakeholders' commitments to work together. And working together start by engaging, communicating, having a dialogue, being able to understand each other, which sometimes is not so easy. If you take, for example, the research and development processes, for years it has been built as a sequence. Each of the different capabilities and experts were used to work independently from each other. Now, it's very important that not only scientists and clinicians work together from the beginning to better understand what is the best way and path forward for medicines to reach the patients, but it's also very important that we engage other stakeholders, and in particular the patient, into this process. These new normal environments will require contribution for everyone in the healthcare environment, from public representative, private research communities, patients advocate, which I'm very pleased to have some of represented here, healthcare systems organizations, technology companies, and much more of that. And so yes, today it's mainly about connecting healthcare. If we can start with the patient in mind, then we can deliver the best possible value for the patient. As Maria mentioned, I'm pleased to serve at the EFPA, which is the European Federation of the Pharmaceutical Industry and Associations. And within my new role as president of the FPA, as well as the CEO of a company, I see the urgencies of building a much more connected system in healthcare, wherever you sit in the contributions for the patients. And at the beginning of my tenure at the FPR, the team put together a video that should or could illustrate that, and I would like now to share this video with you. So, thank you. So, as you've seen in this short video, there are a lot of initiatives that are raising everywhere around the world about areas or pain points that are currently solved by bringing people together. The problem is that today, these initiatives require a lot of energy because they are not supported by the system, not in the environments. Nothing is really built and have been built in a way that should or could stimulate and facilitate the ability of different part of the organizations to work really well together and to build solutions that can help the patient. So all of these initiatives are very important ones, and you have seen a few here about stroke, hepatitis C, on diabetes, in order to make sure that we can help the patients in the future. But it's fair, I think, to recognize that we need to help this initiative to develop and to create even more impact in the future. Because everybody in the healthcare environment share the same intent. I do believe that everyone wants the best for the patients. And so it's on our responsibility and our duty to create an environment that stimulates this type of initiative and break down the silos and the fact that all of these people sometimes are working too much in isolation and someone against each other, rather than starting to find the best solution for the patient. As I said earlier, at UCB, we have a particular focus on making connections and trying to make sure that the solution that we try to put on the market for the patients help the patients in the end. There are many partnerships that I could illustrate this. I don't want to summarize all of them, but just a few of them. As you know, we are involved in the epilepsy environment, and epilepsy is a very particular disease, I can say. I mean, all diseases are very particular. And by the way, each patients are very particular. But in epilepsy in particular, it's not such an easy way for society to recognize and to integrate epileptic patients and provide the best support for epileptic patients. So we have recently announced a partnership with the University of Washington to improve the care of people living with epilepsy with an engagement with community pharmacists. And the idea here is to leverage the pharmacist knowledge to make sure that they can connect with epileptic patients and provide a better support to them in order to illustrate and improve the outcome for the patient. We have also engaged partnerships with Partners Healthcare in Boston, for example, and we are part of a network that stimulates wearables that can improve outcome from the patients connected with the payers also. And in immunology, just to take another example in the different therapeutic areas, we have also have a collaboration with several patients group and patient associations in order to better address the impacts of chronic inflammatory diseases, which are also very damaging for the patients. And these works have created an environment where we have now a program in place, which is the IBD pregnancy clinical pathway, where basically patients who suffer from IBD can get sufficient information to either if they have a pregnancy or if they plan a pregnancy, to make sure that they can better understand how to be well treated during this important phase of their life. These are only a few examples, but as I said earlier, we need to build and to create an environment that not only support this example, but make these examples the rules and not the exceptions anymore. Because if you think about the challenge ahead, such as dementia or cancer or diabetes, there is a tremendous need not just for new medicines, not just for making sure that these medicines can find their way to the patients, but making sure that we can engage the patients. Because if at the end of the day, we do not have the ability to have patients engage in their treatment, each individual patient, then we have not fulfilled our mission. And that's the reason why we are committed to work with everybody involved in this race to try to make sure that in the end, it's people who are living with chronic disease. They can live the life they want and not having a life decided by the disease anymore. Yes, new treatments are coming in. New treatment that can slow disease progression in the future. Maybe sometimes create a disease interruption or cure chronic disease. If we want this to happen, we need to really be able to work together and create an environment that ensures that we are just measuring one thing, how people living with chronic disease are happy with the life they live. And we can find way to accelerating that interactions in the future. I do believe that experience and opportunities like today are the best possible platform where people coming from everywhere from the healthcare system can really learn from each other and work together, because we cannot longer afford to have a narrow focus on each of our specialties or our expertise, but we really need to better understand how to work together and to build a broader coalitions of actors dedicating for the best of the outcome for the patient. And it's in this spirit that I would invite you to participate into today's bioconventions, making sure that you leverage this experience for the best of your future, and this will be a better way to illustrate the connecting healthcare that I would like to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tellier. I now invite you to take your seat, and I'd like to invite your fellow panelists, Jen Martin-Hall, Senior Vice President for Corporate Communications at Sharecare, Dr. Jane Morgan, Director of Innovation and Research Development at Piedmont Healthcare, and our moderator today, Cornelius Bankston, Managing Partner with TechPlug, to the stage for a lively chat about empowering the patient.
Good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, we got to do better than that. This is going to be a lively conversation. Good morning, everyone. All right, that's better. That's better. So I'm Cornelius Bankston. It's such a great pleasure to be on this stage with this esteemed panel, JC, Jen, and Dr. Jane Morgan. It's a pleasure. So I'm going to ask the questions, but before we do that, we'll just allow you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the group. We'll start with Dr. Jane Morgan.
My name is Jane Morgan. I am the Director of Innovation for the Piedmont Healthcare System. There I lead the development of all of our intellectual property, our patents towards commercialization and licensing, manufacturer partnering and tech transfer. I'm a formerly trained cardiologist, so I'm a couple of deviations away from where I started, but came up through the pharma industry, actually at Solvay and Abbott in devices, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
Hi, I'm Jen Martin-Hall with Sharecare. I am bringing a little color to the panel in terms of the outfit, a little probably atypical for Georgia Bio, but I'm the digital health petri dish, as they say.
Yes.
As far as my expertise, I'm not a cardiologist, but I am definitely a patient, so which is part of the reason for wearing the prairie dress. Just very pleased to be here and really excited about all of the energy that Georgia Bio has around really bringing digital health into the foray and working together to really attack all of the healthcare issues that we have globally, not to mention in our home state here in Georgia.
All right. And we heard from JC earlier, so thank you, everyone. So we're going to kick this off. So one of the things that I know from your talk, JC, that kind of I pulled out some nuggets, and one of the things that kind of hit me hard was you said something, teamwork. Anything is possible, right? And so we have a diverse panel here from different perspectives, a patient, a physician, and this wasn't planned this way. And we also have a pharmaceutical representative here. So one of the questions I want to kick off with you, Jen. Where does a digital health company like Sharecare fit within this healthcare ecosystem, and how is it fostering greater connectivity in the consumer's health journey?
Sure. So for those of you who aren't aware, Sharecare is a digital health company founded by Jeff Arnold, who some of you may know. He originally founded WebMD, and he founded Sharecare with Dr. Mehmet Oz. And the whole purpose of Sharecare and the mission and vision was to truly put every person's healthcare all in one place where they could access it at any point in time, and they could actually own their data. Which I know is data is obviously a big hot topic in all of our industries and companies right now, but we truly do believe that it is our responsibility to put that back in the hands of the consumer so they can better control their health and manage it on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we actually set a really interesting inflection point to be able to empower the consumer and serve as a conduit for all members of the ecosystem to be able to fuel, empower, and be with the patient once they leave the clinic, or once they, after they've taken their treatment, or reminding them to take their treatment, as the case may be. So I think that there's never been, frankly, a more exciting time and a bigger opportunity relative to the collaboration that can take place between digital health, the pharma industry, and all of us in this room in particular. And that's, again, why we're here and why we're excited to be here. And I just want to say your comments about teamwork are so critically important, because while we do bring a little high-tech flair to everything that we try to do, we will not sacrifice the high-touch imperative that we all need to bring to people each and every day. And so we're trying to bring the delicate balance of that, and I think that actually healthcare is probably better positioned to be able to do that on behalf of the consumer better than any.
I'm so happy to hear that. Technology, actually reaching people,
Yes.
touching people, exciting. JC, similar question. How does a global biopharma company like UCB foster greater connectivity in the patient's health journey?
Well, there are a lot of examples. I may illustrate that on two streams. One is that we are involving, of course, in research and development of medicines. These have been done for a very long time, using, in a sense, the patient as a way to test our medicines, not really an actor of this process. So I think it's very important that all of us, when we try to engage in the development of new medicines, we engage it with the patients at the beginning. I will take two examples of that. One is, as you may know, as soon as you start a clinical trial for a new medicines, you need to get the patient's informed consent, making sure that the patient is aware about what's going on and to participate in the clinical trial. We realized few years ago that we were writing these documents mainly from our perspective, what makes sense from maybe an expertise standpoint, a clinical development standpoint, a legal standpoint, but not really from a patient standpoint. So we tested our patient-informed consents to the patients, with the patients, and we realized that they didn't understand it. And so how we want to ask the patients to be conscious and consciously make a decision, yes, I want to participate to this clinical trial, if you don't really write the documentations in a way that the patients can understand, right? So this is a way to better connect the patients with what we are doing. We also realize that when we do these clinical developments, we make the test and then we have positive results, and we publish that in very high scientific reviews and scientific congress to present the results. But we also realize that we were never giving the feedback to the patient who gave us their time and their commitment to the clinical trial, to let them know in a language that they can understand what are the results of the study they participated in. So now we are doing that. So you see there is a lot of things that we can do much better if we start to think with the patients in mind, instead of starting to solve the technical challenge that we want to avoid. So this is one mainstream that we can do. The other one is really, as has been said before, it's really, if you think about the environment we are in, there is a tremendous opportunity that we are just beginning to fulfill. Wearables, the data, making sure that we are connecting this data. The data in healthcare are very fragmented. I mean, and it's not just in the US in a sense, it's everywhere in the world. If you think about Japan, for example, Japan has a one healthcare system, universals, managed by the state. So you can assume that all of the patients there have an electronic medical record and all of the data are stored in one simple database. It's not the case. So we need to really drive these revolutions of putting the data together and making sure that the patients own their own data, and then all of the data are putting together, so then we can learn from this data, and that serves to two objectives. One is better outcome, and the second is making sure that the patient knows where they stand in the management of their own disease.
Right. I think that's great. Patient-centric is the theme. I think that is high touch. So, Dr. Jane Morgan, from your experience and from the work that you do at Piedmont Healthcare, what are you seeing as it relates to connectivity within healthcare? What are some of the innovations that you're seeing through the clinical trials perspective, also through big tech and digital health?
Right, I'll add to both of your comments, actually, and I think we do indeed find ourselves in both challenging and exciting times. We have, within clinical trials specifically, very excited regarding the mergers of big tech with our study sites and our pharma and device companies. Specifically, very interested in the partnership of Apple and the American Heart Association with Brigham and Women's for a women's mobility study, with the University of Michigan for a hearing study, with Harvard and the NIH with the heart study. And I think the more and more we start to see how this consumer-driven movement will begin to shepherd us into the next stage, it is actually quite foggy. We are walking into the fog, not quite certain where this will take us. And I think when we think about it, we can harken back to 1981 when Merck actually printed its first direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical ad. That was back in 1981. And then 1983, a pharma company called Boots did the first television ad, which lasted, I think, less than 48 hours before the FDA took it down. And you see how far we've come, and now, you know, the top 10 pharma and device companies spend more on direct-to-consumer advertising than we do on R&D. And so I believe that this is the direction that we're going in, you know, with the development of research apps as well. We're now able to seriously dedicate resources towards the recruitment of minority groups into trials that have been significantly underrepresented, because everyone has access to the information and can access it and begin to enroll themselves and ask questions. And you're not dependent on whether your physician or your healthcare provider has the access or has the information. And so these are all, you know, incredibly exciting, incredibly challenging. You know, one door opens and, you know, a row of tacks are on the other side of the door that we have to walk through. But I'm very hearkened and encouraged, and you know, this era is not for the faint of heart.
Right, right. To couple what JC had mentioned about the data piece to your work, how important is this data as a practicing clinician? Getting this information from devices, getting this information from, you know, pharmaceutical companies through clinical trials. How does that help you in your practice of medicine?
Right. So, you know, a double-edged sword. You know, overwhelmed with data, too much data, more than we can actually review. We are, you know, challenged with the EMR system, which is really built on documentation. And, you know, I was speaking last week and gave an example, which I think is, you know, very prolific, of a child, and sometimes children really are the ones to actually show us in simplistic terms, you know, the reflection of what our life really is. And a child drew a picture, a depiction of her visit to the doctor for the second grade class. And she and her mother were drawn as stick figures on one side of the page, and the doctor was sitting on the other side of the page with his back to them, looking at a square. And this was her visit to the doctor. And I think that, you know, one of the things that was mentioned as well is technology has been great, but it has come at the cost of the patient-physician relationship. And there was a time when physicians were healers. Technology has moved us into the era of treating diseases. And we need to now move towards technology reinserting that human factor, that human touch, I think we discussed, repersonalizing the depersonalized process of technology and utilizing it now to really forge connections, because we know that emotional support, the touch, the mental support, all of those are factors in healing. And we need to perhaps move more towards the middle of actually being real healers of patients and their families, and not treaters of disease processes.
Right, thank you for that. You know, one thing just hit me just sitting here on the stage. I look at all of us, right? And this is a very diverse panel, so thank you, Maria. So it represents how healthcare is, right? So you have different people from different walks of life and different stages of life, and trying to get engaged in this very complex and fragmented system. So JC, another question. What excites you about this new era of medicine?
You know, I mean, if you take chronic disease, and in 2025, most of the case, more than 70% of the disease most likely will be chronic diseases. So it's a big change because we have been used to treat more acute healthcare accident that may be chronic disease. So how to deal with chronic disease in the near future? Today, in many cases, we are just treating the consequence of the disease. So we are more symptomatic. Now, with progress with human biology, we are better understanding what's really created the disease, and so we can modify the evolution of the disease more and more to the point that we can maybe intercept the disease, stop the disease, and if we can do that, then you can feel that we can maybe even avoid the disease to start with.
Sure.
So this is a journey we are in. That's created a tremendous challenge on all of the environment, because if you are building systems that used to see a patient every month for 20 years to treat chronic disease, we are not prepared at all to have a single intervention that maybe can cure a chronic disease. So this is one element. But if you push the logical even a point further, we can use our body to manufacture drugs. We can use the body to synthesize the protein, for example, that may treat the disease, which means that instead of having all of these big infrastructure, we can use our own body to modulate our immune system or to create the defense that will fight against the disease. It's already there for certain disease in oncology. It's already there. This notion of manufacturing maybe is the next step. So you can feel and see that we will probably in 20 years from now in a very different place than where we are today in a lot of different diseases. I think this is one of the reasons why we need to anticipate these changes and try to create an environment that can really be adapted to this new environment versus what it is today. And it's probably this with the voice of the patients that will be the two triggers that to me will change the system.
Right. Now, something that stuck out, chronic diseases in our body has the ability to help fight that. So that kind of leads me into shared care and social determinants of health. Jen, could you tell us about Shared Care's Community Well-Being Index a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So just some super quick background. So Shared Care to date has made 13 acquisitions, which is, again, we were talking about opportunities and challenges. That's one of those things too. One of those acquisitions was actually Healthways, who some of you may know is kind of an expert in kind of population health and disease management. And we wanted to be able to take a lot of those protocols and kind of reverse engineer them and put them into a platform to be able to give actual consumers access to them. But part of that acquisition was at the time, the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index, which became the Share Care Gallup Wellbeing Index. And when we looked at things, when we were ranking the states and ranking the communities, it had a lot of great information across, purpose, financial, general health, but there was kind of like a higher ledge that we were missing. And so we actually have partnered with Boston University to develop the new Community Wellbeing Index, in which we're, of course, monitoring different markers across people's health from an individual standpoint, but then bringing in things like neighborhood and built environment data, right? Really digging into the community and how that community is truly impacting, because typically we've only really focused on individual and perceived risks, and our healthcare expenditures are going up, and the outcomes are flat, if not worsening. And so we really need to kind of move the needle there. And so we actually are in the process of kind of parsing and going through all of that data, not just data for data's sake, but data with purpose, and are bringing in 600 additional social determinants of health factors into our Community Wellbeing Index. Because again, you have to look at also safety and security. If you don't feel safe in your neighborhood, it legitimately impacts your ability to seek and access care. And then when you look at the state of Georgia, I mean, we have 69 counties in the state of Georgia that don't have an OBGYN, right? That's a big deal, especially when you rank number 50 in the country in terms of maternal mortality, which we do, and infant mortality is not that far behind. So we are really looking at this to be able to get better information on how to look at protocols, how to bring community leaders together to impact those things, but also to be able to provide a consumer-facing dashboard to it. Because when you, how many of you have Googled like restaurants near me, doctor near me? The Google phenomenon of near me has increased 900% year over year. We have to answer for that in healthcare, particularly in a consumer-driven paradigm. And we believe that the data that we're pulling from the Wellbeing Index and these geospatial views will be able to provide, will enable and empower people to make the healthier choice, the easier choice, whether they're on their commute home, they're gonna walk their kids to school, or they gotta make a choice between, you know, hitting the farmer's market or going to the McDonald's drive-through.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so that's this topic is very near and dear to me. This is a little off script again. See, I'm just riding around. But around, you know, diverse populations, social determinants of health, chronic diseases. I'm from rural Georgia. I have a whole health history. My father has diabetes, both legs amputated from complications of that, partly because of where he is and what he eats drew complications. But we know that our body can help build up defenses around that. We know that there's innovative solutions that can help people get the help that they need. So Dr. Jane Morgan, what are you seeing on the clinic side? How can we bring the pharma piece with the tech piece so the patient can be empowered to live the best lives that they can live from a clinician's perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think, you know, Sharecare is starting maybe to work on that along with the pharma companies, but obviously there needs to be, and I think JC alluded to it, you know, the silos that we all live in. You know, there are doctors, there are patients, there are pharma companies, there are device companies, there are manufacturers there, and none of us really talk until it's time to sell something to one another, including selling, you know, healthcare and insurance plans. And so I think, you know, those silos need to come down. It needs to be more porous and a flow of liquids between all of the tubes. And such that we can really all understand what we're doing and how we are all able to contribute to solving this. And I think, you know, really what you're getting at is how do we move towards population health, making everyone healthier as a group. You know, there is something called, you know, in the immunization world called herd protection, herd immunity. And if you have a certain percentage of your population immunized, the other percentage doesn't necessarily have to be immunized because the herd remains healthy. And so the herd never contracts diseases. So those who are not immunized and are susceptible to diseases never get exposed. That's called herd immunity. And I believe that as we move forward into that, that's really what we're talking about, you know, with population health, becoming more porous, all of us interacting further such that we can develop sort of a herd immunity and move forward in a more connected manner.
So have you seen what are some of the innovations you've seen, additional innovations you've seen in that from your research?
Yeah, so, you know, at Piedmont, you know, we are working quite a lot on the patient experience. That's one of the focuses of Piedmont, that's very Piedmont-centric. And what is it like for a patient a day in the hospital at Piedmont, and how can we make that more seamless, more streamlined, more effective, more human interaction touch points, but also technology interfaced with that to make it a much more futuristic experience. And so the touch factors are not just human touch, but, you know, touching a wall and screens appear, or the nurse virtually appears in the room and begins to give you instructions and those types of things. And so we're very focused really on the patient experience. Piedmont is a multi-complex, multi-building, incredibly complicated. I've been there 5 years. I'm still not sure where I am sometimes in the tunnels that are running through. And it's an incredible maze for a patient. And so we work on that as well, on how do we resolve the experience of the patient when they come into a complicated system as to even where do they go to their first appointment and how do they get there.
Right. So that's great. You know, it's interesting you're speaking from a Piedmont, a very domestic Atlanta perspective. So JC, from where you sit, can you speak to how new connections are being made in healthcare in other parts of the world?
Well, listening to you, I was in Milan 2 weeks ago visiting a hospital, and
I'm sorry, you were
in Milan, in Italy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's one of the biggest hospitals in the city, and they start this journey of the patient experience. And you know, I think in certain European environment, it's maybe something which is still relatively new. But for the first time, they've been now since a couple of years, they are doing exactly what you mentioned. And it's very interesting to see how the community within the hospital trying to be more conscious about the real experience from a patient standpoint, which is quite new, actually. 10 years of medical school, I've never been trained in terms of what is the experience from a patient standpoint, right? When you visit private offices, it's a question that I ask constantly to the physician. How do you feel about the experience of the patients? Still today, some of them ask me, but why are you asking me the question? You know, I have met just very few physicians that spontaneously, organizing, randomly select patients from their database and ask them to join over the weekend or a Saturday morning to take a breakfast and just to evaluate what is the experience in my practice, right? It's relatively new. We used to have and we used to see the patients as the receiver of an expertise that we as physicians, we give to them, right? We haven't never seen really the patients as the customer. They need to be happy with the experience that they have with us as physicians. This starts to change. I think this is a very important journey. A second element maybe just would like to put into this conversation is the ability to, collaborations means also the ability to share more. And we are very reluctant to share. And very often we think our data is our data. You know, it's for us, pharma companies, for example, it's relatively recent that we are sharing publicly the data of our clinical trials, not just to regulatory agencies, but also making sure that people are getting access to that, right? There is one public-private partnership in Europe named IMI. It's the most important worldwide public-private partnership. It's been there for 10 years now. It's more than 5 billion euros of investments. And the purpose of that initially was to say, we are here to solve challenges that cannot be solved by either individuals, one state, one institutions, one hospitals, one university, one country, or one pharma company. So what are the topics that we need to work upon together in order to help to advance science? Initially it was for science, now it's for data. There is one program, for example, that put together a lot of companies, data providers, and countries in Europe to try to create a common joint electronic medical record for 100 million of populations. And you know, you can think that the healthcare system is fragmented here in the US. Think about Europe with different languages, different countries, different healthcare environment, right? So this is a huge program. But the journey of that and the learning of that is that the more you talk to people you are not used to talk with, the more you find solutions you have never thought about. And the more you share, the more you realize that protection doesn't help in the end. You know, we need to be very clear what do we really want to protect, but all the rest, let's share it. And you know, we are sometimes very concerned about data privacy, which is a very important element, but frankly, data privacy sometimes is defined by healthy people. But if you think about the patient and if you think about sharing your own data in order to help other patients, normally patients say yes, and they are willing to share because they know that by sharing they may get more in return. So I think there is really a mindset shift that is needed to occur.
Well, I think especially as millennials are kind of, you know, coming into the fray more and more, they understand kind of that quid pro quo much better than a lot of people. Of like, if I give, I will get. And if they don't get the get, then they're gone.
They're gone. Quick, fast, and in a hurry.
But we need to think about that. Like, what is that value proposition in particular on the digital side? I mean, that's obviously what we think about, you know, a lot.
Right. I love teamwork, collaboration, patient-centric. I'm going to do a quick time check. I keep looking at Maria because I don't know how to read that time. Last round of questions. Okay. Thank you. Because that was challenging. No problem. So this is great. So back to you, Dr. Jane Morgan. You know, earlier in one of our prep calls, we were talking about. So I have this whole thing, right? So around big tech, right? So everyone in here has an iPhone, and you know, most people might have a Samsung or Android or something. But we are now living in this very connected world, right? And Apple is doing some amazing things through the Apple Watch, right? And connectivity and things of that sort. And this is off script a little bit. So what are some of the challenges with that?
It's sounding off script.
It is. It's going. I'm going to take you there. So what are some of the challenges? We can see the benefits of being connected, but what are some of the challenges of having access to all this tech from a patient perspective? And I'm going to ask you from your different silos, what are those?
Sure, and I'll just start with the low-hanging fruit. You know, obviously the challenges are that the information goes to people who are not capable of understanding it, are not capable of interpreting it correctly, may over-respond or under-respond. are now being their own healthcare providers and not actually seeking advice from those who have the expertise. So, and it goes on and on. It's sort of the low-hanging fruit. And the positive aspect is, however, that it's empowering for the patient. The patient is aware and is able to monitor some of their own disease processes and then manage it a little bit, hopefully, actually a lot better, more in a minute-to-minute as opposed to waiting for their physician's appointment, going into the doctor, finding that they've been in atrial fibrillation for the last 3 weeks, that type of thing. And so you have the opportunity with technology, which is a plus and minus, to have information instantaneously and then to respond instantaneously, be it for the good or for the bad. But this is where we are. As I started, we are both in exciting and challenging times, and where this will go and what some of the restrictions even may be. I think the FDA is grappling with whether or not it has any jurisprudence over the expansion of big tech into the healthcare industry with our devices, and what does need to be monitored and what does need to come under the FDA regulations. And so, stay tuned. We don't have the answers.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I think that, your point about making the information and the data relevant to the individual is incredibly critical, because again, that's just data for data's sake. That's a talking point, that's checking a box. So really going in and trying to meaningfully understand, and again, bringing it back to the community and making it holistic, right? Trying to, turn the episodic into the everyday. I mean, that's kind of what we're really trying to do. But, we're also dealing with, and again, I use Georgia as an example because obviously we're here and this is Georgia Bio, but it's also an incredibly interesting case study in how to solve for a lot of challenges across our country, because we are rural and we are urban, right? We are rich and we are poor. We are incredibly racially diverse. I mean, there's a lot there, Georgia in and of itself is kind of this petri dish of challenges for us to be able to tackle and solve together in a lot of ways. And I think that, we cannot do it alone. We absolutely have to do it in partnership and collaboration, with everyone. And, one of the things that has given us a lot of interesting hope that definitely is more of the high touch than the high tech piece is the launch of Walmart Health. And, some of you may have seen that Walmart recently launched a pilot for a Walmart Health centers, starting the very first one in the country in Dallas, Georgia, right? Because we have got virtual care deserts throughout our state, despite the breadth and the reach of someone like a Piedmont, right? And we have a lot of really amazing hospital systems, but there are people having trouble getting access to care. But those people are walking through Walmart every single week, right? And the opportunity, again, if we're really gonna say we're gonna go where they are, then we have to go to Walmart, right? And so, and that's obviously just a retail example, but we have to get into like the daily fabric of people's lives to understand that we're gonna walk that journey with them. We're not relying on them to do it on their own. And you take care of you after you walk out of the clinic. No, we're gonna be with you. And so Walmart is a big partner of ShareCare's, and we're gonna be the actual digital companion that they will help to onboard people, to give them information and tutorials on how to take care of themselves a little bit after they leave the clinic, in between visits, and referring them different places, but to just try to be with them so they don't feel alone. Because in addition to loneliness driving, incredible amounts of stress and depression and unhealthy habits, there is nothing like feeling like you aren't alone to make you feel empowered.
Sure.
So that's what we hope to be able to accomplish.
JC.
Well, maybe two other elements maybe to add to what have been just said. One is, first of all, it's a cycle of maturity. So we are at the very beginning, and so we need to learn about this cycle of maturity. And from my perspective, there are two elements which are important. One is ability to detect noise out of signal out of noise. There is a lot of noise, and there will be more and more noise. We are not used to this type of noise because we have been built as an industry to try to build an experimentation. So we had a question, we build the experimentations through clinical trials, and we get the answer to the question we have asked. Now we are in a different environment where we have a lot of data, and we don't know exactly what we can learn out of this data. So we need to be able to detect softer signal out of a tremendous amount of noise, That's the challenge for us. The second element, which will how to validate these noises, how to make sure that this is really relevant for the particular patients and the particular disease we want to treat. And from a regulation standpoint, this is massive. So I think we are in the beginning of this cycle. Sure. We need to change the way we are asking questions. We need to be open to ask new questions, and we need to be aware and prepare to work with what is available versus building a complete experimentation from scratch, answering the single question that we wanted to answer now. This is a complete different way of working, and keeping in mind that we need to do that with the patient outcome in mind, which is what is relevant for one patient. You say we have a diverse panel here. Mm-hmm. There is the same diversity in patients' population than in life. Sure. So, and we are not used to that. We used to say diabetic patient, like if all the patients with diabetes are all the same. Yeah. They have the same diversity, that there is in this room. Yes, exactly. So you cannot think about treating these patients in the same way. Exactly. Data is a tremendous tool to be able to adapt what works for you, which will maybe doesn't work for me, if we use the data in the best possible way.
Awesome. Great points. Thank you all so much for the insights. And I think I'm going to walk away from this discussion thinking through patient-centric healthcare. Let's focus on the patient first, and let's see how our innovations can make their quality of life better. Thank you all so much for your time and contribution today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So nice meeting you, yeah.
Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you. Oh, it's a pleasure.
It was fantastic. Thank you all. I am Jane Caraway. I am the Director of Life Sciences for Georgia Department of Economic Development. So on behalf of Governor Brian Kemp, Commissioner Pat Wilson, we are thrilled to be here and be a part of this. I had some notes, but I'm not really going to look at my notes. I'm going to talk from right here and tell you why we do what we do to be able to help you and to empower those patients. As I listen to everybody who's so much smarter than me this morning talk about this, I'm the marketing person. I get to go and tell these stories about what you do. But what Georgia does, and Georgia does well, is those relationships that we're talking about, bringing people together, giving people access to be able to empower themselves, figure out what those answers are. But we are one of those, I heard somebody say last week, if you're a director, you're supposed to be nose in, hands out. Well, we're not hands in, we're hand holding with you. And I don't mean that to lead you along. I mean for us to walk together as a team to figure out what the answers are, specifically in this area that touches me the most is this life sciences arena. Maria was right. We've all got circumstances that we could speak of. I have an absolutely the prettiest and the sweetest granddaughter that probably would not be here had it not been for the innovation and the research and what was known as a part of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And I'm grateful for that today because when she says, "Bubby," I'm thrilled. And I know that that is part of what we do. Let me speak just a little bit now to what we do as a state of Georgia and talk to you. You saw our video running. You know how good the life sciences industry and how strong it is here. But Georgia exists, and what we do to make it easier for you to do business in the state of Georgia, we've got low taxes, we have all of those pieces, we have logistics that are a part of that, job tax credits if you're creating jobs, all of those things that we do well. We have 12 strategic locations around the world, foreign direct investment, international trade. Team Carrie's here somewhere. You know, she can help make connections for your company, large or small, internationally for us. We are thrilled to be a part of that. We also have living in, listening to, working with communities in those 159 counties around the state, listening to what's going on. We have economic development people to step up and be a part of that and help. We have what I'm going to claim today is universally the best training system in the world, and that's Georgia Quick Start. Now, we say it's #1 in the U.S., but I know that we are the largest market that exists on this globe, and we're not sure or know of today any other globe that exists out there in the universe that is any bigger. So I say we are the best. They're designed to help get that up and get it started, but also realizing that a lot of money is being put into education of that workforce and people being able to understand. Without our mentors, without working together with companies and organizations, I bring companies in all the time. I go and talk to companies and organizations trying to fill those gaps where we are wanting someone else to partner with you. And then you, every single time, each and every one of you in this room, whether you're the patient, whether you're the company, whether you're Georgia Bio, who is our partner, MAC, other partners, our colleges and universities, step up to the plate and come along with me, whether it be a travel or a step in. And I say, tell them why we do it in Georgia, and I walk away and let them tell that answer. We don't listen to what they share. But let me tell you what the companies are telling me. It's the relationships, it's the willingness to share, it's the willingness to see everyone succeed. It's for the good of others. It's for the good and the empowerment of each one of you who, if you're not today, will at some point be that patient we're trying to empower. Thank you.